It was a clear spring morning high in the Himalayan mountains. The air was crisp and carried the scent of pine and snowmelt from the peaks above. In a remote hillside monastery, the monks were gathered in the meditation hall. Seated on straw mats, they listened intently as the head monk led the Dharma talk. As we know, right speech is central to the Buddha's teachings, he said, looking out over the rows of shaven heads. Our words have power. They can uplift or destroy, heal or hurt. We must learn to speak with care and loving intention. The monks nodded solemnly, all except one. A young novice named Dorje. He shifted uncomfortably on his mat, his mind distracted. For the past few days, Dorje had been struggling with anger whenever he thought about something the merchant's daughter had said in the village below. As part of his monastic training, Dorje went to the village regularly to seek alms. Normally, the villagers treated him kindly, but the merchant's daughter, Dechin, seemed to delight in mocking the monks. The other day, when Dorje held out his bowl to her, she deliberately poured in only a few grains of rice. "Is this meager amount enough to feed your greed?" she had smirked. Dorje was outraged, but held his tongue. After all, as a monk he had taken vows of patience and non-violence. But seeing Dechin's arrogant face still made his blood boil. How he wished he could tell her off and put her in her place. "Dorje, are you listening?" The head monk's sharp voice jolted Dorje back from his brooding thoughts. "Yes, venerable teacher," he stammered. "My apologies, my mind wandered." The elder monk gazed at him steadily for a moment before continuing the lecture. Dorje bowed his shaved head, embarrassed that his agitated state of mind had been so evident. After the talk ended, Dorje lingered in the meditation hall, troubled. Why was he allowing Dechin's provocation to cling so stubbornly in his mind? His anger was like a poison festering within, disrupting his spiritual practice. Seeking wisdom, Dorje approached the head monk later that day. Bowing before the venerable teacher, Dorje explained his situation and the anger he harbored towards Dechin. The monk listened thoughtfully before speaking. Anger is one of the most destructive emotions. It is said holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal. While you do so, it is you who gets burned. Dechin's words were unkind, but harboring resentment only causes you to suffer further. Dorje nodded. "You speak truthfully. But how can I let go of this anger when she acts so hatefully without reason?" "Have compassion for her," counseled the elder monk. "Outer actions often reflect inner troubles. Dechin may be facing difficulties about which you know nothing. Return only loving kindness, not anger. This is the path of the Bodhisattva." Placing his hand gently on Dorje's shoulder, the old monk then suggested he spend the next few days in solitary retreat, meditating upon loving kindness and compassion. Dorje bowed and resolved to follow this wise guidance. Early the next morning, Dorje set off hiking to a small stone hut high in the mountain forests above the monastery. Here monks would come alone on spiritual retreat for days or weeks of deep reflection. Setting down his bundle of provisions, Dorje entered the one-room hut. He placed a small Buddha statue on the altar and lit some incense. After drinking a cup of tea, Dorje settled onto the meditation cushion. Taking a few deep breaths, he began reciting the loving-kindness meditation. "May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings dwell in peace." Slowly, Dorje felt his mind begin to calm as he repeated the sacred mantra. When thoughts of Dechin arose, he consciously transformed his anger into wishes for her happiness and well-being. Though difficult at first, Dorje persisted. The long hours of meditation in the quiet hut soothed his soul. On the third day, a sense of lightness and liberation arose in Dorje's being. The bitterness that had weighed him down dissolved, leaving only loving compassion in its place. Dorje saw now that Dechin was a troubled young woman deserving of empathy. Her actions reflected inner pain, not malice. At the end of the week, Dorje descended the mountain feeling centered and renewed. He bowed before the head monk, thanking him for the wisdom shared. The elder smiled, touching Dorji's head in blessing. The following day, Dorji woke before dawn and made his way to the village to collect alms. As he walked down the dusty road, Dorji rehearsed what he might say if he encountered Dechin, but all words fled from his mind when he saw her approaching from the other direction. Dechin's usual cocky swagger was gone. She kept her eyes downcast, and he simply held out her small pot of rice. Dorji looked closely and saw her worn clothing was stained with patches of blood. Her lip was freshly split and one eye swollen. Seeing the marks of abuse on the once haughty young woman, Dorji's heart ached with compassion. "What happened? You are hurt?" Dorji gently asked. Dechin's eyes flashed with a hint of their old defiance. "It's nothing," she muttered. "My father lost his temper last night when I spilled his rice." Impulsively, Dorji wanted to comfort her, to make her feel cared for in the face of such cruelty. But he restrained himself, recalling the monk's caution about right speech. Instead, Dorji simply bowed his head, hands pressed together in blessing. "I pray you find comfort. May all beings dwell in peace." Taking Dorji's bowl, Dechin poured in the rice, then hesitated. In a small voice lacking any sarcasm, she replied, "And also with you." Dorji noticed other villagers were now approaching with their morning offerings. To spare Dechin any awkwardness, he bowed again politely in thanks and continued on his way. But Dorji's brief interaction with Dechin stayed with him throughout the day. He realized only now how badly she must be suffering to lash out so scornfully before. Her prickly words had been a cry of pain, not cruelty. She was helpless, trapped in her circumstances. Dorji wished he could ease her sorrow, but knew real change must come from within. The best he could do was return the darkness in her life with light, to act with compassion. Over the ensuing weeks, Dorji made a point to greet Dechin mindfully whenever he saw her around the village. He would pause and bow with hands pressed together, reciting a short blessing. At first, Dechin seemed puzzled by his behavior, but gradually her defensiveness began to soften. Though she still said little, sometimes the faint hint of a smile graced her lips after these interactions. One afternoon, about a month later, Dorji was walking back to the monastery when he heard rapid footsteps behind him. He turned to see Dechin hurrying to catch up, carrying a small bundle. "Please wait," she called. "I hope to catch you alone." She shyly held out the cloth-wrapped bundle. "It's only some sweet rice cakes, but I wanted to offer you something more than plain rice. You have shown me such kindness. I wish to make a humble offering." Dorji's eyes misted at this simple gesture of gratitude. He saw Dechin's inner spirit shining through, beyond the protective mask she wore. Bowing deeply, he replied, "Your gift brings me much happiness, but the greatest gift is seeing you able to give it with a joyful heart. This is all I could wish." Dechin flushed and made a short formal bow. As she turned to head back down the path, Dorji spoke once more. "Be well, sister. Light surrounds you." Watching her walk away, Dorji rejoiced at the transformation in Dechin. By letting go of anger and embracing loving compassion, he had not only healed his own heart, but touched another's. He understood deeply now the Buddha's teachings on right speech. Words spoken with mindfulness could uplift souls and open the door for change. From that day onward, Dorji made compassion and care the guiding principles of his speech. He chose his words with wisdom, spread warmth with gentleness, and offered insight with humility. Seeing how even brief interactions could plant seeds of hope, Dorji became a beacon of light wherever he went. Though his actions seemed small, their effect rippled outwards in unseen ways. And Dorji knew this was only the beginning. With a spirit of love, every word could make the world a little brighter. All it took was mindfully thinking before sharing his feelings, and speaking his truth from the heart. The path stretched before him, and Dorji walked it with joy. Moral of the story: Words have power, use them wisely. Thoughtless or angry speech can wound, while mindful words can heal. Take time to reflect before voicing your emotions, and speak always with compassion. Transform negative feelings through understanding. Anger and resentment only breed more suffering. Seek the humanity in those who hurt you. Respond to darkness with light. Meet cruelty with kindness. This is the path to peace. The key lessons are to consider the impact of your speech, control reactive emotions through reflection, and cultivate goodwill even for those who provoke you. This embodies the Buddhist emphasis on right speech and compassion. By thinking before sharing feelings, we can uplift rather than harm. Mindful communication enhances our own spirit and positively influences the world. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate your support.